I am pleased to introduce Stacey Conti. Stacey brings over 20 years of operations, merger, and integration experience with her to her company Merger Managers LLC, which creates effective, standard, and scalable merger integration processes for their clients. In her 10 years at Oracle Corporation, Stacey managed over 40 acquisition integrations. She has been involved in every aspect of deal making and is co-author and editor of M&A Integration, a CEO's field guide to the art and process of effective integration. Thank you for being with us today, Stacey.
Thank you, Alan and Daryl. For this segment of the webinar, we're going to focus on some common mistakes and lessons learned from the trenches. First, we'll talk about the 5 common integration mistakes. Second, some issues specific to project management. And third, how to solve some of those issues using process and tools. So the first thing we'll start with is the 5 most common integration mistakes. One is simply in the deal side, is not having operational input in both the financial modeling and in the structuring of the deal. Oftentimes we'll see senior management, legal, bankers, and accountants creating the assumptions that go into the financial model, creating the numbers, the timeline, and all of those things that can have a direct impact on deal structure and purchase price. By involving one layer lower in management and some key operations managers, hopefully an integration manager, you'll have an operational reality check which should help structure the deal and financial model and help you create an integration strategy and plan, which will also allow you to evaluate key personnel and identify hidden integration costs. The danger here is that some operations and integration managers could actually bring the deal to a screeching halt by dragging too much tactical detail into the process. So ideally, you get the right person in there, and then the more successful that they are with the deal, the more likely integration will get called to the table earlier, and the role will become more strategic. The second most common mistake is the integration strategy is just incomplete and occurs late in the process. This fire-ready aim process can almost completely erode most value from deals. And as many people on this call know, the stages of the acquisition happen simultaneously. And you can't start integration planning after the transaction is closed. It needs to be dynamic, and it needs to happen simultaneously. Legally, businesses must remain independent until the transaction is completed, but you can plan as much as you want and just not execute until the transaction is closed. So hopefully the real work was done prior to close, and you have a business, product, and operational plan, as well as integration priorities and milestone dates, so that they're factored into the deal structure and financial model. And hopefully that's before signature and board approval, but regardless, it has to be done before close. I've found with earlier integration planning, you actually get cleaner deals and better balance of risk and juggling of currency. The third most common mistake is project management. And having, everyone is so excited for the hunt and the deal, but few really stick around for the cleaning and the cooking. And that's what the real stuff happens. So if you're going to invest millions in a deal, there's no real reason to skimp on the integration. You need to dedicate enough resources and management attention to do this right. So first, the team must be made up of senior managers, not junior managers. It's a true balance between seniority and bandwidth to get the job done. Senior managers should be able to make long-term decisions for the company that look beyond their own functional area and their quarterly results. They need to be able to leverage completely across the company, look for long-term leverage points and synergies that really weren't even thought of by the deal team. Oftentimes that really requires senior management to do that, as well as non-conventional methods they can use to get some problems solved, which the junior managers might not be able to do. Second is having a handoff from the deal to the integration team, and this helps dramatically as team members come on board throughout the integration, and more people need to be onboarded later on. And lastly, it's some project management that needs to be optimized so that you don't lose the engagement of the executive team, and that obviously brings me to the fourth point here, and that's leadership. Every deal needs a champion. You need somebody engaged from beginning to end. The business leader and the integration leader have a very important partnership, and you want the integration leader focused on the transaction and the business leader focused on the business and making sure that they have accelerated growth for the combined company. To keep these business leaders engaged, you've got to make this process useful and not painful to them. I want my executives involved in the strategy, the problem-solving, communication, issue resolution, not really in the minutia of joining the companies. So I found the fastest way to lose an exec is to actually let them sit on a 1 or 2 hour status meeting each week. So you need to reserve that time for exception reporting, cross-functional issue resolution, strategy discussions, and employee communications. And that brings us to the last point here, and that is not balancing business with integration or not integrating at all. I'm going to take these separately because it is definitely a pay now or pay later issue, and believe me, now is later. From the business side, there's a reason you bought this business, and it was an investment. And so you can't overload the company so much that the business grinds to a halt. You have to keep the business running and make as much change as the organization can bear and is warranted, but they have to be fast and staged and prioritized so that you can keep the business running. From the integration side, you want to make sure that your integration strategy falls somewhere, in the continuum, whether it's a shared service model or whether it's a full assimilation. You have to have some sort of responsibility for the business and the integration tying together. And you don't want any built-in conflict of interest where the integration is a distraction to the P&L, because then it does get delayed or put off altogether. So in any kind of an acquisition, you're going to have some value erosion, and you have a natural productivity slump. But on the flip side of that, you also have this expectation for change, and you have a window of opportunity to actually make those changes quickly. So if you deal with the me issues and the issues that are creating the slump first, then you can usually get the business back to running very quickly. So the first thing is the me issues for the employees. Are they going to be able to pay their mortgage next month? Not what's the strategic idea of the company. Get the customer uncertainty handled, organization structure, product direction, and cultural gaps and loss of talent handled early. Leverage that change by integrating as fully as possible, and that way you can keep the business running and you can minimize erosion. So in my opinion, speed is better than perfection in this case. So that brings us to the interesting challenges on our next slide. So first, you've got business leaders that are dealing with challenges that even at the senior levels they may have never experienced, especially not simultaneously. On the integration side, you've got cultural differences, leadership, style differences, loss of key employees, channel conflict, remote management, all sorts of different things that they're not used to dealing with. On the environmental side, you'll have a productivity slump, low employee morale. You'll have a headhunter and recruiter frenzy, low trust level because you're just coming into a new organization, uncertainty, insecurity, maybe some ambiguous goals, culture clashes, rumors, politics, and positioning. There's really few business experiences where executives may not have experience in all of these areas, and again, not happening simultaneously. And as integration leaders, you have all of those issues plus some specific problems with project management, and those are the three that we're going to talk about here. So one is leadership, making sure that your execs and your team is engaged and focused and that they're focused on the integration. Most integration leaders have full-time day jobs, and they're going to be competing for their time for the integration. So you want to make sure that you have them engaged. Secondly, team members are added, and they may be added and brought up to speed on a continual basis. You've got a way to have that done quickly. And you're managing distributed and global teams in most cases, and a lot of times they do not have direct reporting expertise for you. Second is information management. So you're going to be collecting reams and reams and reams of data, collecting it, reporting it, and trying to disseminate it to the team, all the while creating your plans and changing your plans constantly. So you want to make sure that you have some process for doing that reporting, which can be consuming and oftentimes overburdening. So communication up and down the organization needs to be handled quickly and effectively. And then third is decision making. A lot of times there's an information lag, and the team is going to be making some very important strategy and planning decisions with very limited information. Obviously, as you gain more access to company personnel and information, you can create plans that can be changed and goals that can be reprioritized. Dealing with these issues, you're still going to have some small problems. Instead of waiting to escalate, they may end up turning into real problems because of the time delay. So you'll end up fighting brush fires instead of forest fires. And then lastly, it's hard to keep a macro view of the integration and find leverage points across the organization, and synergies are going to be evaporating and finding new synergy areas along the way. It's all very challenging. So what are you going to do about that? That brings me to the next slide. I'm taking Gerald's slide where he talked about the must-dos for an integration plan and bringing you some 10 success themes that I've seen from my clients that have actually been successful in their integration efforts. But what we're going to do is concentrate on number 10, using the right resources and the right tools. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. I'm going to illustrate that point by examining kind of the evolution of a serial acquirer. Now, most companies that use inorganic growth to achieve shareholder value are going to fall into one of these three categories. Either they're deal makers and they're doing acquisitions here or there, or they're doing acquisitions on a more frequent basis, maybe even more than 2 a year, and then they move into the acquire category. And then finally, if they're really using inorganic growth as a key component to their product strategy, then they end up in the serial acquirer category, where they may be doing 2 or 25 deals a year or more. So what we want to do is kind of go over the evolution of these companies and where you start building infrastructure and where you end up needing tools to make that structure happen. So somewhere between acquirer and serial acquirer, you get to a point where the deal value will actually be captured or eroded, whether you have infrastructure and tools. And so if you create the appropriate level of infrastructure and use this easy set of tools, you'll actually be able to hit your break-even point faster. Which brings me to the next slide. Manuel is going to talk into detail, so I'm just going to highlight some of the key areas where I've found using the right tools to really be a value enabler in my working with transitions. First is on the management by dashboard. You're able to have real-time, accurate picture of status, issues, milestone, and deadlines. If you're doing weekly aggregated status reports, then you have a very onerous process and a very long lag time in terms of getting an accurate picture of what's going on with the transition. By having that dashboard and real-time picture, you have a lot more flexibility and a way to look at things a lot quicker. Second is in productivity. If you have a less cumbersome and easy-to-use process, then the team has more time to focus on their day jobs and actually work on the meat of the integration instead of the cumbersome process of the integration. Third is training. Especially when you have a very distributed team, having a project management tool used where you require a lot of training is really unrealistic, especially at the senior management levels. Having an easy-to-use, intuitive, web-based tool where really there is no training involved, you can get a lot more effective use and quicker results from your project team. So most senior level management have not had project management software expertise, and so using a web-based tool makes the reporting process much more effective. Next is communication and defined goals. By having a repository of information where people can get real-time information, it's current, and where priorities can be changed quickly and goals can be changed quickly and communicated to everyone, it allows proactive and not reactive management to issues and leverage points. And then lastly, executive ownership. You get a little bit of an elimination of politics and positioning if you have everything right there for everyone on the entire team to see. So with that, you're getting some timely decisions and some real accountability. And there's a lot of non-avoidance of important integration priorities as well. So in summary, to avoid making the 5 common integration mistakes in an environment that's particularly challenging from a business and program management perspective, successful integrators can use the top 10 success themes, and most importantly, using the right resources and tools, and structuring the process that you can create your value instead of eroding value.